Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on which part of the world you are. I am here in Sydney, Australia, and it's a really beautiful day today. So, welcome to the channel, and I hope you guys are doing great. In this channel, I like to talk about religion, and today we'll be talking about a debate that actually took place several years ago between Christopher Hitchens and Tariq Ramadan. Now, recently I watched the video and I found something really interesting, and that is actually the reason why I decided to make a video. Now, during the debate, at one point, Christopher Hitchens mentioned that if you want diversity, cultural and religious diversity, you need a secular state and a godless constitution. That is what he said. Let me actually quickly play the video.
Yes, so then my closing statement is, if you want diversity as much as the professor does, as much as I'm sure many people here do, religious diversity, cultural diversity, what you need for it is this. You need a secular state with a godless constitution like this one.
Okay, so you heard from Christopher Hitchens that if you need diversity, you need secular state and godless constitution. And I think both of these, he mentioned several things. He mentioned about diversity, he mentioned about secular and godless. Both of these things, I think, need scrutiny. And in my humble opinion, I think he is misguided. And I'm going to elaborate that why I think that way, because like Christopher Hitchens is a very well-read individual. He's very accomplished. He wrote many books. He's a public orator. He appeared in many debates. He has lots of accomplishments. So why do I think that an individual, a personality like Christopher Hitchens, he could be misguided? And this is what this is why I decided to make this video. Now, secularism, right? Why do we need secularism? Right? I mean, a society is governed by the laws. When these laws are derived from theology, that is when the society becomes much more regressive. Like, if I give an instance, Sharia law, it has punishments, right? I mean, very medieval, very barbaric, very brutal, very primitive punishments, right? Chopping off people's hands and feet, stoning adulterous women to death, beheading, honor killing, child marriage. If a woman has to prove that she is raped, she has to bring forth 4 male witnesses. Now, these are obviously very regressive, very primitive laws. And even if you look at Christianity, like abortion, women do not have the rights for their own choices, right? I mean, when it comes to the choice of having an abortion, they cannot have the same right. So because of these kind of laws, the notion of secularism was born. Separation of church and state. Now, obviously, secularism has achieved some great things, right? Freedom of expression, one of the probably the most foundational principle of the modern civilization, the Western civilization, is this freedom of expression, and this is the result of secularism. Gender equality, equality for women, consent, legal age of consent, all of these things have been achieved by secularism. It has achieved some great things, but at the same time, if you look around the world, what do you see? You see animal abuse, right? Now, you can say that because of secularism, animal abuse have been reduced. Yes, it is true to some degree. You are talking about, treating animals in a more humane way because of secular laws. You have to, you are bound by those laws so that those animals are being treated in a more humane ways, which is, again, is some form of animal protection, but it does not protect animals from being killed. secularism does not have a moral stand to say that we have been able to stop animal killing. And more striking example is environmental abuse, right? Nowadays we have this virus, this pandemic, that people are saying that, oh, environment has changed, a lot of things are happening, now we are susceptible, we are much more prone to new diseases like this. The sea level is rising, the diversity, the biodiversity, the animal diversity, or the plants, the trees, the biodiversity is being disturbed severely. That's why the environment is now reacting. You see droughts, you see floods, all of these things happening because of environmental abuse. So if the righteous civilization is, the secular civilization is the best that we can achieve, obviously this has not been able to protect the animals, this has not been able to protect the environment, right? So is this the best? According to Hitchens, this is the best, right? You need a secular state with a godless constitution, which is what he is proposing, which is what he is espousing, that this should be the ideal for entire humanity. But this has not been able to protect the environment, it has not been able to protect the animals, then how a secular state can be an ideal solution? This is the question I want to ask. Now you contrast this with the righteous civilization, the Indian civilization, right? That existed thousands of years ago, 5,000, at least 5,000 years ago, could be more, could be 10,000 years. Now that civilization, the Indian civilization that existed so many thousands of years ago, and that was based on theology, right? The Hinduism is based on divinity, is based on God. Is that a better civilization? Could that be a better civilization? Could that be a better model for life? That is what I want to explore. That is what I want to elaborate, right? So if you look at Indian civilization now, the idea is that, first of all, okay, before we get into the civilization, first of all, let's talk about diversity, because at the very beginning of his statement, he mentioned about diversity, religious and cultural diversity. Now, India, it gave birth to 4 peaceful, humane religions. Hinduism, obviously, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Peaceful religion, 4 peaceful religions that ever existed on human history that came out of India. Now, obviously, these are some special branches of Hinduism, right? Hinduism is the root. Hinduism is the one that came before everything else. So obviously diversity was protected, right? When Buddhism was spread all throughout India, not a single drop of blood was shed. That is a historical fact. So obviously this diversity, this cultural and religious diversity was protected. That is point number 1. And now let's talk about the philosophical part, right? The secular state, that the secular civilization, the philosophy that came out of secular civilization, right? The gender equality, rights, human rights, freedom of expression, and all those things. Now, if you contrast the philosophical terms, the philosophical things that came out of Indian civilization, that came out of Hinduism, in my opinion, these are actually far better ideas than what a secular civilization has been able to reach so far. Just to give you a couple of examples, reincarnation, where does this idea come from? It comes from Hinduism, right? In chapter 4, verse 5, I believe, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 5, Krishna says that you and I are born many, many times. I can remember them all, but you cannot. He's talking about reincarnation, that you are not never born, you never die. You are eternal, you existed for eternity. I can remember all of my births, but you cannot. He's talking about reincarnation. That an animal, you are on its journey to reach Lord Shiva, right? An animal's journey to Lord Shiva, journey of a Pashu to Pashupati, an animal's journey to Lord Shiva. That an animal which is, reincarnating, going through these cycles of life and death until he reaches perfection, until he reaches the Lord himself. Vivekananda said that as the different streams have their sources in different places, all mingle their water into the sea. O Lord, different paths that men take through different tendencies, various though they appear crooked or straight, all lead to thee. These are all God's path. Polytheism, reincarnation. Where does these ideas come from? It comes from Hinduism. And then equanimity, right? Taking the good and the bad as equal. In chapter, I believe it was chapter 2, Krishna says that who is a wise man? Who is a wise man? When Arjuna didn't want to take up the arms to fight against his own kinsmen, right? To go into a battle against his own family, Krishna says that, oh, you are deluded, right? You are never born, you never die. You have to take the good and bad as equal. You shouldn't be disturbed by either of them. Equanimity, mental strength, that you have to shed this weakness. You are deluded, you are weak, right? You have to shed this mental weakness. You have to take up the arms and fight to destroy the evil, right? You shouldn't be disturbed by the joys and the sorrows, and that is what the characteristic of a wise man, right? Equanimity. It talks about mental strength. And in chapter 5, verse 10, it talks about unselfishness, right? That as the lotus that is born at the bottom of the lake in the dirt comes out of the water and reaches to the sun, the same way men have to perform their duties as an offering to the deity, right? That the lotus, which relies for its sustenance on this dirt and the water, but is not touched by it, the same way man has to perform their duties as an offering to the deity. And then, that is, he has to give up the fruits, he has to be unselfish, and then he will be exonerated from its sin, right? Unselfishness. So these ideas, and also it talks about, right, in chapter 11, verse 2 to 7, it talks about illusion, that you cannot see. When Krishna didn't want to take up the arms, he says that, oh, you cannot see the reality, right? I am in different forms and shapes. Polytheism, I am in everything, right? You are never killed, you are never born. Illusion. Then Krishna gives Arjuna this divine vision, that now you see, that you cannot see because, like you have this veil, you have this veil, you are, you are deluded. Then he removes the delusion by giving Arjuna divine vision, which essentially means illusion. So these great ideas, right? Illusion is a very, very great idea. It means essentially that all our beliefs are wrong. All of our beliefs, essentially whatever the beliefs that we have, they're all wrong. So these great ideas, when you think about the philosophical merits of these ideas, these are far greater than what a secular civilization has achieved so far, right? The idea of reincarnation, polytheism, giving up the weakness, mental strength, equanimity, right? Unselfishness, and of course illusion. So these ideas, in terms of its merits, these are far greater ideas compared to those came out of a secular civilization. So how is this better? How is secular civilization that Christopher Hitchens was proposing, how is this better than a righteous civilization that has a divinity in its center, right? The righteous civilization is based on theology. It has a divinity, it has a Godhead in its center. Bhagavad Gita is the the word of God. Ramayanas, Mahabharatas, that Ramayana, Rama is an incarnation of God. Mahabharata, that the central character is Krishna, is the incarnation of God. So all of these philosophies is based on theology, is based on divinity. That now Hitchens was saying that you need a secular civilization without and a godless constitution, without a god. How is this better? Whether like in those days, right, in thousands of years ago in India, we know that still people practice vegetarianism because of these ideas, because of ideas such as reincarnation. There are animal rights, there are environmental rights, everything has its place. Now, Hitchens was proposing secularism, but it has failed to protect animals. It has failed to protect the environment. Then how is this better? How a secular civilization without a god is actually a better than with a god and a righteous civilization that was proposed that came out of India and proposed by supposedly God himself, Krishna. Is Christopher Hitchens misguided? Well, in my humble opinion, he is. He is misguided. And if you think otherwise, please let me know. I'd be very happy to be enlightened by your knowledge. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I will catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.